While founders celebrate the coding phase, the real challenge isn't building a feature, it's building a revenue engine that survives the market. Welcome to Reimagina Blueprints. I'm Antoinette Herrera, and here we decode the world's most disruptive minds to give you a shortcut to impact, para que puedas construir el futuro hoy. Esta biblioteca de conocimiento nace en Latinoamérica como un puente hacia el liderazgo global. And because knowledge has no borders, we'll continue in English. In this episode, we talk with the architect behind the growth of industry giants. She is an expert in AI and GTM strategy, and as a CEO of Aetheris Ventures, she turns builders into elite founders. By the end of this conversation, you will have the blueprints to create a real system to scale globally from the leader who literally wrote the manual. Let's Reimagina Blueprints with Angeley Mullins. Based on your experience scaling global engines, how a solo founder automates sales engine using AI?
What I will say to all the founders is sales is your first job. So it doesn't matter if you are an AI expert, an engineer, you have agriculture, manufacturing, retail, fashion. It doesn't matter what industry you're passionate about and what you did. When you become a founder, you're now a salesperson. You are the brand, you are the company, and people want to buy into your story and your vision. The best thing you can do, and I always tell founders this, is to take out a pen and paper, and I do it old school, do it with a pen.
It's a good thing.
Right. And, just write down what you believe. And I always say that if you want somebody to follow you, they have to know what the belief is. So just write down, like if have a startup in the fashion industry, how you believe, your product, your fashion line can change lives. If you have an AI company or a tech company, the same thing. So that's the first thing. When it comes to AI tools, not necessarily about a race to get the most tools. And that's where I feel like where we're at. Everybody's looking at the buffet of AI tools out there, thinking that if they just have one more, they're going to stumble on this magic gold mine. It's really about putting the tools together, right? It's about having the right combination. Is it a tool that's going to last? Is it a tool that's easy to use? So this is really what to think about.
Yeah, I stayed for a bit in, is this the right tool for you? Because it's an extreme anxiety for everybody. I try to learn from all of them, but probably not all of them works for you. It's very true. Another thing that you mentioned, that if you are a founder, you are the brand, kind of, right? And you apply a methodology that is personal brand as a moat. Can you tell us first what is a moat? And then how is this methodology applied?
Think about those very old school movies in medieval times, right? When you had a castle and you have a castle and you're trying to attack the castle. They would build basically what's called a moat around the castle. So it's like a trench. It's almost like I'll call it a mini lake, but it's like a circle so that it's harder for people to attack the castle because you have to swim across this moat, right? So back in the day, it was a defensive technique. In technology and in scaling, we say, what's your moat? Basically, what's your defense? What is going to make it very difficult for somebody to build your same product, to take over your company? And this is why I say it comes down to brand, because we're now in the age of AI products and can build any feature whatsoever. It can build features in days. Even 5 years ago, founders thought, oh, if I just have this one more feature, and you'll find something called feature wars, right? Well, they'll get up on the website and here's my product and my features, and here's my competitor and their features, and I have more features. We're past that age, and we're now into the age of branding, storytelling. So that is your moat. That is what people, and that's why I say, if you're a founder listening to this, what do you believe? Why should people follow you? What's your story? This is the same moat, by the way, why people still stick with Apple. If you have an iPhone, if you have a MacBook, people still stick with Apple, even though the Microsoft Surface tablet is technically superior. Doesn't matter, because Apple built up a brand and they built up a loyalty.
Yeah, it's outstanding the fact that it has been many years, and we're still quoting and thinking about Steve Jobs. We think Apple, Steve Jobs. It doesn't matter who is currently the CEO. It's the fact that he's not here in this planet with us, and he's still a presence in our memories is something interesting to analyze how he applied the methodology to create this personal branding to avoid creating this issue that when he's not longer in the company is not viable anymore. He continued without his presence. How he achieved that is insane.
It's totally achievable. Steve Jobs did was he created a movement, even though, and if you can Google this, you go to Google like Steve Jobs, Apple pictures, old MacBook pictures, and he had this big clunky machine and people didn't quite know what was going on. But in some of his original campaigns, he didn't say, this is a computer. He didn't say this is the RAM or the processing or etc. He said, think different. And that was his campaign, right? So creating a movement, and there's many companies that have copied this playbook. Think of Notion. If you go into Notion, pretty ugly product, going to be honest. You get in there, it's not that sexy. It's not cute, but they created a movement around it. And now everyone's so impressed by creating a Notion page. Not even that sophisticated. You look at Clay. Clay is one of the hottest tech companies right now. People use it for research, for outbound prospecting, for integrating into your CRM. It's an incredibly difficult tool to learn. It's so difficult that they created these Clay clubs, right? And so they took a book out of the community Notion, whatever playbook, and they created all these clubs around the world where people get together to be trained on how to use the tool. Very smart, because then they created a movement. It just goes to show you it is not how great your product is. It is how you position it, how you promote it, how you sell it, and what the belief system is.
Wow, how powerful it is. It raises me a question because we are talking about this like kind of a recipe, but in which point you stop being honest with the message or just repeating?
This is the interesting thing. I think you can see this with AI generated content. People started using ChatGPT. Now in 2026, they're using Claude. You can tell what is AI generated and what is not. So it's starting to get very noisy out there. But then if you get people and you can tell that they're real humans. So it's one of the reasons, like even when we're doing this podcast, I have my real background. Everything you can see, it's a very real picture. So people who are authentic, people who use their real voice, you have mistakes, you have, we'll call it backstory reel shots. These are the things that people want to see. So yeah, authentic.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. The other day I was thinking about the error. I started to feel interest in start talking about the error. When we start something, we start, I need to be perfect. I need to over prepare to do something. But right now, yeah, it's a thing. Like, it's a good thing to make mistakes sometimes, learn from them and laugh about it even.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So I'm here in Europe, and in Germany, they don't like to make mistakes. And seriously, it's in the culture. And they don't want to be pointed out as the one that failed. In America, where I'm from, people just get up there and they'll say, yeah, I messed that up. I failed. We'll go on to the next. And they wear it as a badge of honor that they tried. So when you look at these cultural aspects, right, there's no entrepreneur on the planet, and I've talked to many of them, who has not failed. All of them have failed. And there's that famous saying, it says, if you show me a person who has only had success and has never had failure, I'll show you a liar. And this is the important thing for founders listening to understand. Every founder fails. That is actually the stepping stone to success.
Not even founders, because we're talking to founders, of course, but probably this video appears for someone that maybe is just a professional that is thinking about take the leap and decide to be a founder or change a work because the job that they have right now is not good enough. I think it's the same message for them too, for anybody. The fact that we start looking this error as a badge, as you say, I think is a good thing, especially for women, because I've noticed that in our field, as a professionals, there's people who say you need to be perfect because that's the way you achieve success. And it's scary to think that everything has to be perfect because you start paralyzing. So what advice can you give to anyone that is overthinking because everything has to be perfect?
You know, at the beginning of my career, I was the same way. I thought that I could control my way through these challenging situations, and it doesn't work like that. I know that maybe some of the listeners will think when I say something to the effect of, if it's meant to be, it will be. Some listeners might think that's too fluffy, right? But trust and believe, the longer you do this, if it's meant to be, it will be. You cannot control your way through everything. The pursuit of perfection is a fool's errand. Show me someone who is perfect. It does not exist, right? It does not exist. There's no such thing as a perfect product or a perfect person or a perfect process. Because if there was, especially on the product and the process, somebody would have packaged it and sold it, and we would all buy it and we would all own that perfection. But that is not true because it doesn't exist. So it's very important for people to understand this. Because there have been many people across many continents that have wasted a lot of their time in life chasing a perfection that does not exist.
Yeah, I totally agree. Regarding to personal branding and create content, that I know is something that you're very passionate about. You said that traditional content marketing is dead because everything sounds like a ChatGPT, and I think it's quite related to perfectionism. What is perfect? What is not? What is the proof of humanity that every content should have right now?
I think right now, storytelling is starting to emerge as the it thing, because over the past 10 years, everything has been so technical. And in this pursuit of perfection, investors, CEOs, founders, operators, especially in the marketing field, done data-driven marketing to a degree. Like literally, there are some people out there who their whole job is to optimize the conversion of a button, right, on a website. Imagine if that's your job. Optimize the conversion of one page. That used to be me. I did that many years ago. And now I look at what I did and I'm like, oh, ridiculous. Now AI tools are doing that for you. So if AI tools are doing what we call this analytical base layer, what is our role in this picture? For me, it is bringing the story to life. When you have AI tools that can build your product, for example, the March 8th here in Berlin, International Women's Day, Lovable as an example is having a huge campaign. So all the women, we're going and we're building something. It's going to be amazing. But when you have tools like Lovable can build something for you, you have analytics tools that can measure everything. You have graphics tools that can design everything. And you have content tools which can push out SEO, GEO do all of this. What is our role? And I very much believe our role is to be the ultimate storyteller, to really be the voice. I gave a conference in London and I said, why is storytelling going to be the ultimate GTM motion of 2026? And again, for the founders listening, if you think storytelling or talking is fluff, I will point you to a couple of jobs that are currently being hired for. There's one at Miro, very great company. It's a job called a head of storytelling. It's a job, actual job. It's not an internship. This role is paying over $200,000 a year. Job. Not bad.
Take that out.
Right? There's another one at Vanta. Same title. The Wall Street Journal in December of 25, they posted an article saying that corporations are desperately seeking storytellers. It's because there's this fundamental shift happening. The data, it used to be people are seeking data analysts, data scientists, like all of this. As AI is doing the heavy lifting on that side, we have noticed a fundamental gap that we forgot about the most basic element of humanity, which is the story. And you can think back to like, if you've ever seen a movie in the old caves, right? Where they'd have those markings in the cave. Yeah. Even in caveman days, they're putting markings down and they're telling a story. And when you think about the written word, whether it's pictorial or with actual alphabet, this written word, this story has been literally part of the essence of our whole existence. And it's something that in tech, it's like we completely forgot about it. And so I think now you're seeing a renaissance.
It's extremely interesting how humans need for the very beginning to tell stories. And it's not just to only to communicate, it's also to create a memory, something to recall in every culture.
Every culture. And it's really the essence of our existence, right? So because whatever outside of time is a unit of measurement, what else proves your existence? What do you leave behind? It is the story. And so I think tech is finally starting to realize this. And I think they're being forced into it because AI, like I said, is doing the heavy lifting on what I call the left side of the brain, which is usually the analytical side. And the right side of the brain is the creative side. So now this is why I think that creativity is going to become this new renaissance when AI really starts to advance.
With taking this in mind, how we can take this storytelling to become a huge company with revenues that break all the statistics.
So this one's quite interesting. I always give the example of Nike because most people have worn a Nike shoe or they've heard of, and it's really interesting. They sell shoes. Let's be honest. They sell shoes. Yeah. So when they sell the shoe though, they don't talk about the rubber to make the shoe, the laces. They put campaigns out about how you feel when you're wearing it, what you're overcoming, right? They tell a story. Some of their greatest campaigns, there was one called Find Your Greatness. People overcoming. And I remember there was a video and it was a guy and he was very overweight and he's just running on this pavement, right? And he's like overcoming his battles. So powerful. Yes. There was Colin Kaepernick, so the American football player, and he had like a very interesting social stance where he took the knee on the field to really stand up for people that were being discriminated against. Nobody wanted to hire him after that. Nike took a chance on him for a campaign, and it was really like, you can't win anything if you're not prepared to risk everything. You know, it's kind of like find your greatness. And it was one of the best campaigns Nike ever did in the history of its existence. So this is how you do it and how it can be successful.
Wow, that's the power of tell a good story. That makes you feel elevated in a way. Like, I can do it too. Why not?
But it's the belief, because Nike, when they talk about this, and again, like they sell shoes. I just want people to understand, not selling the cure to cancer, they're selling a shoe. They're really wrapping people around this belief. They tell people what they believe, and people will buy into what you believe. And I always go back to Tony Robbins, which is a motivational speaker. He's one of my favorite ones of all time. And he always said, people don't buy what you sell. They believe what you believe.
Yeah,
And so as a
that's so
founder,
powerful.
right, as a person, if you can just remember that, that is really going to carry you. And I think the tech industry now is being forced into it. There used to be, just so funny, about 5 years ago, we had this, I would say, product marketing overkill, where there would be ridiculous YouTube videos and, founders would get out there and these videos would be like, Bob has an office problem. This office problem, is terrible. It costs him a ton of time. And had this ridiculous music in the background. Here's our company with this magic product and these magic features, and we're solving the world. And people thought that that was great. And now you put something out like that and people are rolling their eyes, right? So I think it's just to prove that people are so bombarded with ads. They're bombarded with features. So I always say, like with AI tools now, when the cost of creating a feature goes down to basically zero, then what's left? Right? And that's the story.
I want to ask you regarding, because you have an outstanding background working with outstanding brands and companies and scaling them. The day one, was the critical metric that you analyze in those companies the first day that you say, we need to check this out?
A really interesting one. I think on many podcasts and interviews, you're going to hear many investors, founders, operators talk about all kinds of data-driven KPIs, like revenue per FTE, like LTV to CAC, etc. But when you ask me what is the single most important metric, to me, it is, and I'm from Southern California, so hopefully people can understand what I'm trying to say. It is the vibe of the leader. The vibe of the leader, okay? Because that vibe will carry or break an entire organization. It will carry or break a leadership team. It will either pull your leadership team together or tear them apart. It will get your whole company to work with you through challenging times or not. So that is the single most important thing. And there is another old saying that goes, as goes the leader, so goes the whole company, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the vibe of that leader, are they creating an environment for people to thrive? Is there psychological safety? Do people feel like they are together as a team? And it doesn't matter if it's at the top level or whichever level in the company, right? And usually you can tell after you speak to that leader. You speak to them and you say to yourself after, do I feel good about this or not? That's the single most important thing.
Most of the time when research on YouTube is the metric, the most important metric goes, as you say, like to other directions. But yes, it's important to have this figure that inspires you. And actually, it's a good thing, not only as a commercial thing, it's to the team, to the people that is involved. I know you probably did say it before during this podcast. I want to actionable 3 steps to create high impact as a leader.
1, write what you believe, because if you can't identify what you believe, no one else is going to believe it either. Number 2, take a very deep, strong look at yourself and understand where you are strong and where you are not. Most leaders don't do this step. They're so focused on their product, getting funding, whatever their challenge might be, they forget to develop themselves. And I don't mean about a 10-step course about how to manage or how to put a product, cycle together. I mean yourself as a person. What effect do you have on others? Leaders who lead best and have the most impact understand themselves. There is, again, no perfection. You can understand where you're strong and where you're not and how to, make the situation the best you can given your own skills and capabilities. I see a lot of founders who fail. They don't do that step. And that's one of the reasons that they fail. The third thing that you can do is to not be afraid to hire people who are stronger or better than you are. This is another one, and this requires a lot of strength yourself, because sometimes founders feel that to be at the top, you have to be the best. That is not true. And that is one of the lessons I've learned over many years. To be at the top, you need to learn how to surround yourself with the best and motivate the best towards a common outcome. That is the difference. And I've seen many times, because I also mentor a lot of emerging leaders, the biggest thing I mentor these leaders on is when they hit a wall. And I call it the leadership wall. Usually what happens is they are the best in their field. They're an engineer, they're a product person, marketing, sales, whatever it is. And they're so smart and they're so functionally capable, but they can't get into higher levels of leadership. And they're really struggling to figure out why. Usually it lies in the common fact that they spent so much of their energy and effort trying to prove that they are the best in the room, they forgot about everyone else in that room. When you are a leader, it doesn't matter what level, it's not about you. It's about everyone else. So it's a complete mind shift. And this is one of the reasons we call ICs, or individual contributors, why they either struggle to get into higher levels of leadership, or if they get there, they struggle to stay there. So it's very, very important. These are the things I see with leaders. If you want to make an impact, start with these things.
Self-awareness and be humble and acknowledge things in ourselves, like be honest with ourselves. I think that's the most powerful thing that we can do. As a human being, it's not only for founders, because, well, you mentioned a few extraordinary tips that I know is going to be very helpful for everybody. But regarding to investment, because this is something that most of the founders are always worried about. They need to know how to find investors, how to find funding. And one of the biggest challenges is a pitch deck, is to express your idea to an investor. What can you tell them as a biggest advice to tackle those fears?
A great question. And I think it's one of the big questions. The first thing I say is just to put your pitch deck together or to get just quick advice. I mean, I've created my own GPT. It's called the Pitch Deck Evaluator. I'll give it to you. You can drop it in the links for anyone listening. It's absolutely free. It's absolutely amazing. However, once you have your pitch deck crafted and you like it, then you get to the next problem of actually pitching and speaking with investors. The one thing I tell founders is, and I know this is very hard for founders to hear, especially when they need cash and they have a very short runway. Being too desperate to get any kind of money from an investor is just as bad as not having any money. Because I have seen so many founders that they will sign a term sheet because they are desperate for that money, and they sign it with the wrong investor. What I mean by that, getting an investor on board on your cap table is like getting married. You need to make sure it's the right person. You need to understand their thoughts, how they make decisions. How have they treated other founders? Are they really serious about growing with you? Or are you just another number on their 500 other investments? So really take a good look. I see a lot of early stage founders giving away ridiculous percentages of their company for a very small amount of cash. What do I mean by that? Let's say a founder at a very early stage needs 100,000, 200,000. But to get that, they want to give away, or not want to, but they're being asked to give away 20%, 30%. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So at this point in time, you might think that 100, 200,000 is a lot of money, but I can promise you as your company scales, it is not. So this is where I'm saying really think in the long term. Also understand the type of person you're dealing with. And I say this especially out to the female founder. I say this to founders that come from countries that are underrepresented. Sit down with a founder face to face if you can for 15 minutes. If you are in different countries, get them on a video call face to face. The way they look at you, the way they treat you in that very first meeting is going to be extremely indicative of how they will treat you in the future. Especially when it comes to female founders. They're dismissive of you at the beginning, not going to get any better. If they don't treat you with respect or treat your word as they should, doubtful it will get any better in the future. So I always tell founders, stand your ground, because in the end, investors need the founders.
Yes, that's right.
Right? Founders are chasing investors. So I'll kind of use a dating analogy for those of you out there, the founders are the prize, not the investors. The tech industry has taught people that investors are the prize. No, the founders are the prize. Because at the end, it's the founders who are selecting if they want somebody to come on board.
That is a nice way to see it, like a mental shift, because there's this feeling that, wow, the investor is someone that you need to reach out. And it's funny because, as you mentioned, it's like a date. It's not to play like hard to catch. It's more like evaluate. If this is the right partner, this going to add value to my life or no? And if it's compatible, if it's willing to respect what I'm doing, what I'm building. Thanks for saying that, because it's not that often to find those insights regarding to investment. Like, yeah, they can give you this, okay, play hard to catch a little bit, but that's it.
Yeah, I think for me, it's because I came up through the operator side. I came up through scaling companies. And I've been in the board meetings from the operator side. So I can see, number one, I felt the pain of what it takes to scale a company. And I've been in the board meetings where sometimes, not with all board members, but with some investors, there'll be kind of more of this laissez-faire, can you do this, can you do that, without really understanding what it takes. There are some investors out there which are very good, and there are some other investors out there not so great. And so I always say, if you're working with investors or you're considering an investor who has never had to scale a company in their lives, ask some questions.
Okay.
It's very important. Usually, I can't speak again for every investor, but sometimes you'll see a trend. One of the trends you see is investors that came from consulting companies. So they came from BCG or McKinsey, and they turned out to be investors, or they came from finance companies. That means they know how to count. That's great. We like that. But have they ever had to build a scale up? Do they understand? Right? And I think these are the things that you just need to have very clear conversations about.
How can we scale if we have investment or no? Because that might be the case. If you don't have investment, how is possible to scale? And maybe it's too extreme to say, well, how can I scale to become the next unicorn? But at least scale to grow and see what happens.
So AI over the past 2 years has really changed the game on this. Before, you'd have to have huge revenues and hire teams. Now, a lot of the analysts predict that some of the next unicorn businesses will be a company of one person. Now, we'll see. I'm waiting, right, to see,
Yeah.
because I think it's a little bit more hype. But it is true that companies now do not need to be as people heavy as they used to be. That makes it easier to scale. It makes it certainly easier to build and easier to scale. This is why the right side of the brain and your creative vision and your storytelling becomes so important. And to kind of tie this back to your finding investment question, the founders who get out there, who let go of the fear, who share their story, continue to share their voice, investors will come to you. And I think that's the beautiful thing about this. No more sending out hundreds and hundreds of emails to associates at VC firms. None of that. The investors will come to you.
Love it. Love it. I like that way to think. Yeah, because as I mentioned, like these past 3 years, the only thing that I've heard is like, you need to raise money. You need to do this.
Because it's a system,
Yes.
right? It's a system. It's a machine. For example, we're also trained that you have to raise capital in certain stages, and you have pre-seed, seed, and A and B and all of this because it's a system. So when a founder raises capital, usually because they need to, right? Because they have runway to consider. So if you see on TechCrunch, for example, founder raises 20 million, everybody's applauding. And on one hand, it is great, right? That they raise capital. But on the other hand, you just had a $20 million loan.
Yeah.
Right? The loan has to be paid. So I think it's not free money. So I think just really thinking about what that means, which is more important than ever now, to really understand who you're raising capital from. And I think you're also seeing a renaissance on the investor side. You're seeing investors that are now coming from the operator side, like myself, and really understand how to build and scale businesses and can really look the founder in the eye and say, I understand what you went through, right? You're seeing a lot more compassion, around this and understanding. So it's still important, right? I mean, you're getting married at the end of the day. So make sure it's the right one.
Yeah. Well, sometimes we make mistakes. Everything is possible to correct it in the long run. That's life. I was reading an article the other day in Forbes in Central America that said startups led by women can not only be more profitable, but they also outperform in comparison with exclusively lead men companies. And I did that connection with the last thing that you mentioned. And I would like to know your thoughts around this.
So I've heard statistics like that as well. My thoughts, it tends to be true for, I think, the main reason. It's the same answer that, when you asked me about what is the top skill that leaders, in a leader, it's their vibe, how they treat people, the effect of that vibe on people. Female executives, and of course we're speaking in generalities here, right? But female executives tend to be more people-centered. Not in all cases, but in many cases. When I've seen a lot of male-driven organizations, and especially men with very big egos, it can be not nice, right? I've seen a lot of very high ego type of male leaders. They read an article and based off of that, they're firing whole teams. It's way too volatile, right? Women will take risks too, but they will really be more aware of what's happening around them. This awareness gives people, I would say, the sense of psychological safety. This is what's going to carry the company. This is why you're seeing female-led businesses come to profitability faster. There's another reason. Female-led businesses are focusing on some very good, I would say, social problems to fix. They also focus on the needs of women. These are massive markets. We're talking about half of the world's population. So things are changing, but I would say it used to be viewed that men were easier to work with and women not. That used to be the traditional view. That view has now changed because what you're seeing, and if you watch reels on Insta or you watch TikTok, there's actually a new trend. Men, especially in the political world, men will be up there and they'll say, women, can you please just take over? Because look at what we did, right? So
Yeah.
again, this is all stereotypes and generalities, but people say that in every stereotype kind of lies a sliver of truth. The times are changing and now so many people are asking to work for women, to be led by women. So it's an interesting case study. What are women doing that men are not? What are men doing that women are not? And I think the truth and the answer really lies in between that.
I do believe that is fostering community because it's something that we do naturally, organically. We don't think too much about it. We don't force it because it's kind of in our biology to make things grow and take care of them. Yeah. Regarding to this, beyond intelligence and work ethics, that is, of course, are important values. What is the most important skill regarding to this that a female founder or any founder should have?
What I tell founders is the belief in yourself is the single most important. The reason for that is because they don't teach it in school. Your grade school, not university or business school. And it is the one skill that you need and the one thing that you actually need to get stronger over time. The amount of rejection that you will face as a founder is absolutely insane. It's a level of rejection that you might as well be an actor in a casting line. It's terrible. So you're going to have to get thick skin and you're going to have to believe in yourself. And there's many stories about this. So you look at Melanie Perkins and Canva. We all love Canva right now, right? It's $1 billion whatever plus company. And she gets rejected from how many investors? Tons, right? So just think about it. What I always say is a rejection is a redirection, although it's very difficult to hear in the moment, right? Because you're just feeling that rejection. But this is why I go back to say, like, if it's meant to be, it will be, but you have to keep believing in yourself. And it's the belief in yourself. Even if you go back to the Steve Jobs example, and like you said, people view him as, one of the titans of tech. I want the listeners to remember, even Steve Jobs was kicked out of his own company.
It's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was kicked out of his own company, and then they brought in the next person, and that person messed it up, and then they had to bring him back in, and then they kicked him out. Most founders would not be able to even handle that. So just to understand that it happens to everybody. So that self-belief, and I call it not just that, but the mental resilience, which is so hard because I think now mental health problems is probably one of the leading problems in tech. And I call it, tech's dirty little secret is just the amount of mental health problems that's happening from people that are overworked. So if you've heard of like that 996 culture they have in Silicon
Tell me
Valley,
more about it.
it's crazy. For the founders, you just Google 996 culture. It's 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. And in Silicon Valley, it's being touted as the big thing. And of course, there's already problems in Asia and some of the Asian countries working to death. I believe in Japan, there's a term for it. So it's a big deal. You see burnout, you see founder suicides, you see all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So just, the ultimate pressure. And I think that this is not a particular cultural thing. This is an industry thing. And I have lived and worked in many countries, and I've seen it everywhere. So this is where I can say anecdotally my own experience, but there's many articles written about this as well. I'm writing a book now. In one of the chapters, I do talk about the mental health struggles, and I call it the quiet suffering of an entire industry. So you think, for example, Amazon, which most people have used Amazon services, that is literally built on the backs of people. Just think about it. Every time your package is delivered on time, what it took to get it there. And you think now about all these hot AI tools coming out, and everybody's fighting, right, to get the best LLM and all of this. This is built on the blood, sweat, and tears of so many people.
It's important to be aware of this. Like, it's not just produced just for reproduce. There's people behind it. Sweat and tears, as you said. I want to connect this with your need to give back. I acknowledge you as a person, as a human being that is very aware of the humanity around you. Can you tell us a little bit about the Poverty Museum? What is the story behind it?
So in my life, I've always tried to figure out how can you use tech to give back. I started just being a volunteer at something called the Grameen Foundation, which is microcredit finance. And then some of the members there asked me if I wanted to get involved and found this poverty museum. And I said, there's museums everywhere. What does that mean? You're just going to buy a ticket and, walk through some, exhibit? And they said, no, they said the money is actually going to be used for on the ground projects. So the Poverty Museum, we say virtual. The whole idea was based off of Muhammad Yunus, the Nobel Prize winner. And he got up there and he said, imagine a day where you actually saw poverty as a concept in a museum. And people would walk through the museum and be like, poverty, what was that? Like, you mean people didn't have a house? They didn't have food? Like, how could they do that? So this is the actual goal, but it operates very differently because it's project based. It's not some kind of institution. Like, you're not buying a ticket to the Smithsonian, right? This is companies partnering together to give money for on the ground work in underserved areas.
Oh, I love that project. I was so curious about it. because I do believe that is necessary. Not is only possible, it's necessary to be more aware, but also think the impact that might have. Thinking about this, what is the biggest lesson regarding to social business models that we can apply in a for-profit company?
If you can use technology to make lots of money, you can use technology to do social good. When you look at homelessness or people that don't have food to eat, this problem can be solved. It's not a problem that can't be solved. It can be solved. It's just we as a global society have not prioritized it. So we have companies that make billions and billions and some companies that make trillions. There is enough money to solve these problems. So the lesson here is if we can make incredible artificial intelligence, if we can have incredible logistics, if we can have transportation, right? If we can have incredible fashion and design, we can solve the most pressing issues on the planet. Homelessness, food, shelter.
It's actually doing it because you care, because whatever company, whatever size is that company, they just take a moment, can create an impact in others. And just acknowledging that, I think, is a good start. It's something that I can't stop thinking about it. How can I possibly create impact? And it's the entire thesis of my business model. I want to continue with this, but I want to connect it with everything that you do as a mentor, because you're very active. I want to take a moment to highlight those initiatives that you support. What is your experience around mentoring?
I mean, I've been a mentor for many years now. I mentor people all across the world in many different disciplines. A lot of it has to do with becoming a leader, struggles with leadership. But certainly I do more functional mentoring as well. I just started being asked. I fell into it, right? And people were saying, oh, can you help me? Can you give me advice? And it just kind of rolled into, becoming a mentor. And again, it's one of those things. I do partner with a couple organizations. So the Female Factor, it's out of Vienna. Another one is Femme Palette. It's out of Prague. So there's a few of them, but it's really just about sharing your knowledge, your experiences. People think that to be a good mentor, who just talk about functional things. You don't need that anymore. Like with AI tools, you need an analysis done, you can get it done. People want to understand social skills, soft skills, how to communicate, how to deal with people issues. This is where true mentorship really is valuable.
Thanks for bringing that awareness. And the last question, what is success for you?
Success is about what you had to overcome to get there. A lot of people think that success is about the heights that you reach. It's not. It's about what you had to overcome to get there.
Thank you for all your knowledge. And thanks again for your time. And I'm not going to take you more time.
Thank you so much. And it was so great.
Hoy aprendimos que escalar una empresa a nivel unicornio en la era de la inteligencia artificial no se trata de quién tiene la mayor cantidad de funciones, sino de quién logra cerrar la brecha entre la tecnología y la conexión humana, construyendo narrativas poderosas que genuinamente queden grabadas en la memoria del público. En el siguiente episodio hablaremos con la Innovation Manager Silvia Bernardini, quien nos contará sobre su metodología para enseñar a las organizaciones a funcionar como un sistema vivo. This resilient talent is out. To keep Reimagina Blueprints and learning shortcuts for impact, don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next one.